and welcome to the video. Today I'll be teaching you the fundamentals of drawing the human body. There are three key concepts that I'll be exploring: deconstruction, proportions, and anatomy. Let's get started with the first one, deconstruction. Deconstruction is the process of simplifying complex structures into basic shapes and axis lines, also known as construction lines. 3D shapes like spheres, cylinders, and rectangles are used to communicate volume, while axis lines are used to establish the direction in which a volume is facing. Deconstruction will always be the first step of any drawing, no matter the subject. Here are two examples of figures that have been deconstructed. You will see that at this beginning stage of the drawings, there are only 3D shapes and axis lines. Learning to break down figures into its most basic elements will especially help with achieving more expressive and complicated poses, such as this and this. Though these are all very different poses, the types of shapes used for the different body parts will always stay the same. For the head, spheroids, or elongated spheres, will be the best choice, as their length can be adjusted to suit the various face shapes while maintaining the general form. A rectangular prism can be used for the upper torso, as well as for the hip area. It works great for establishing the symmetry and structure of the body's core. Next, the round head and boxy upper body will be connected by the neck, which is often simplified into a cylinder. The limbs are often represented by long cylinders, and the joints between them, including the shoulders, elbows, wrists, knees, and ankles, are represented by spheres. Together, these shapes reflect the ball and socket relationship between the joints and bones of the limbs. Lastly, the hands and feet are made the most simple, since they have a lot of detail that should not yet be captured in this first phase. So, the hands are often shown as rectangular prisms, and the feet are these weird, flat, triangular prisms. Now that the basic shapes have been placed, we can set pairs of axis lines on the surface of each shape to identify where they face. The intersection of these lines will indicate the center of the face. Axis lines are most useful for communicating where the head and upper body are facing, as those two body parts most often determine where the person is looking. Finally, after we have our basic shapes and axis lines, we can bring in the detail. This next step will often be drawing in the contours of the body, which are lines that will connect the shapes to form each body part. Many artists visualize the shapes and axis lines as the simplified skeleton, and the contours connecting the shapes as the skin and muscle that keep the bones together. And that is the entire deconstruction phase. Once these fundamentals are established, we can move on to the human proportions. Many experienced artists say that the second most important part of drawing the human body is understanding its basic proportions. Proportions are all about the sizes and shapes of the body parts in relation to each other. Many artists online recommend the 7 heads tall rule when drawing humans. This is what the rule looks like when drawn out. The full length of the body will be as long as 7 head lengths stacked upon one another. This system of measurement will help establish the locations of all the other body parts. So first, the middle of the upper torso is about 2 heads down. The third head down will line up with the belly button, and the fourth will line up with the bottom of the pelvic bone. Further down, the 5th head will locate the knees, and the 6th and a half will locate the shins, and the feet, of course, will end at the 7th. Keep in mind that this system works well just for the average body size. The body's proportions will of course vary from person to person. At the end of the day, having good judgment and observational skills will be more important than memorizing systems like this one. But if you're a beginner, the 7 heads tall rule is a really great place to start. The third and final concept to understand is anatomy. The rules of anatomy will dictate where and how you can adjust the body to achieve different body types and poses, all while keeping a good sense of realism. Now there are 5 essential aspects of the human anatomy to know. These relate to the spine, neck muscles, collarbones, pelvic bone, and the legs. Number 1, the spine. The first thing to know before attempting any pose with an upright upper body is that the spine is not perfectly straight. Beginning at the base of the skull behind the ears and ending at the back of the pelvis, the spine follows an outward curve along the rib cage, then flows back inward towards the stomach, and then finally curves back out to meet the pelvic bone. This curve is most noticeable when viewed from the side, but as you turn towards the front or the back, the spine will always seem more linear. Number 2, the neck muscles. The next thing to know is that the neck is supported by 2 key muscles that meet at the middle of the collarbone. These are known as the sternocleidomastoids, but I'll refer to them as the neck muscles for the sake of simplicity. The neck muscles make a V shape that makes a point at the front base of the neck and reaches out to the back of either ear. These muscles are often represented as a pair of single lines. When the neck is turned to the side, the neck muscle opposite that side will become more prominent, while the other seems to disappear. Number 3 is the collarbones, also known as the clavicles. They meet at the sternum, which is centered right above the rib cage, and they each extend to either shoulder. Just like the neck muscles, the collarbones can be represented with a pair of lines. Number 4, the pelvis. The pelvic bone has a very complex shape with many curves and dips, but it can all be easily simplified into a unique 3D form consisting of just 3 shapes. It is made up of one sphere with 2 discs on either side, both angled so that they form an expanded V shape about the sphere. When viewed from the front or back, it vaguely resembles a short upside-down trapezoid. The angles of the discs can be adjusted to widen or shorten the hips to fit the intended body type. And number 5 is the legs. Lastly, it is important to remember that the legs are not perfectly straight when extended. When in a standing pose, the hips are angled forward slightly as the human center of gravity is naturally aligned with the center of the foot. So the legs will be slightly tilted forward. This natural forward slope when standing straight is important for conveying a comfortable sense of balance when drawing people. From the front, the body will always look straight when standing, but when viewed from the side, the thighs must curve slightly forward, and then below the knee, the foreleg will curve slightly backward until it meets the foot. And that is pretty much all you need to know about the fundamentals of drawing the human body. Of course, there are countless more details to learn that will help enhance the realism of a drawing, such as learning the natural folds of the skin or the curves of the different muscles. But these 3 basic principles, deconstruction, proportions, and anatomy, can all serve as a great starting point. If I were to give one final piece of advice to those who are learning to draw people, I would recommend a famous quote by Pablo Picasso. Learn the rules like a pro, so you can break them like an artist. Thank you for watching.